Okay, question number 4 from Mate is you say in an interview I said that the distinction between conversation and publishing will become increasingly vague, and you want me to explain that idea more, and whether I think that will become common in all media or particularly in the internet. And can this affect the credibility of news? I'll try and cover all of that. Right, so the idea about conversation and publishing. I think a typical mistake that people make with the internet is to see it as publishing, and mainstream media organisations look at blogs and think it is like our newspaper. What they don't realise is, for the most part, it is not set up as a form of publishing. It is set up as a form of conversation. It's a way for someone to communicate with their peers, their friends, their networks, and that's the case with Facebook, that's the case with Twitter. So publishing is very different. Publishing is creating content that people might have conversations around. So the news organisations really need to realise that for something to be talked about on the internet, it needs to, you need to kind of talk back. There's nothing worse than someone who just doesn't listen. So I think that distinction will become increasingly vague. News organisations will publish less and start a conversation more. They will say, this is happening, tell us what you know, tell us what you think, tell us other angles, if they're going to be successful, I think. And because they're doing that online, I think that may seep into all media, but I think it's particularly in the internet. I don't see television and radio and print newspapers changing enormously because of that, because they are still publishing media. So they'll point people towards the web, but I don't think the conversation will take place too much on those platforms. I think they will adapt slightly. Can this affect the credibility of news? Well, I think trust is an important issue here, and trust is built up through a relationship. So if you're engaged in a conversation with an individual journalist or collection of journalists, you can start to build a picture as to how credible they are and how knowledgeable they are about what they're reporting. So in that sense, I think it can affect the credibility of news. I think you can make a more informed judgment as to how accurate and how believable this information, this conversation is. I hope that kind of clears up the distinction between conversation and publishing. I would add something extra, which is I think there's a third part to this. You have conversation, you have publishing, and there's a combination of the two, what you might call publication or convercasting. And this is when you're on, say, Twitter, and you're saying, Bob, I'm going to retweet Bob, I'm going to say what Bob has said, and I'm going to pass it on. That's an interesting development, and that's something quite specific to the web, and that's something I'm going to explore a bit more.